Hello and welcome into the Wild Tales podcast. I am your host, Mike Bona. Thank you for tuning in. I'm excited about today's episode. We are talking about the scaly and slithery, our friends, the snakes. And I will not tolerate any snake hate on this podcast. They are a valuable part of our ecosystem. And I understand some people may not be the most comfortable around snakes. Some people may have a fear of snakes, but there's no reason to have a hatred of snakes. They are a valuable part of our ecosystem. If we did not have snakes, we'd have a ton more rats and other rodents and diseases because snakes are what keep those populations of animals down. So we love snakes. I want you to love snakes. I'm excited about our guest today and her rattle cam. That's right. I'm going to attach a link to it. This is fun. You can watch on YouTube live 24 hours a day. They have put cameras inside a rattlesnake den, and you can watch just rattlesnakes do what they do. Just live their lives, just chilling and slithering, and it's fascinating. I've been watching it so much since this interview with our guest, Emily Taylor. Let me tell you about her. Emily Taylor is a professor of biology of science at Cal Poly San Obispo, where she conducts research on the physiology, ecology, and conservation biology of reptiles and amphibians. She's got a bachelor's degree in English at UC Berkeley and a PhD in biology at Arizona State. She's written 2 popular books, both science books, The California Snakes and How to Find Them, and The California Lizards and How to Find Them. And she has a 3rd on amphibians coming out later this year. And she has some delightful, great information about snakes. We're going to talk about that rattle cam. If you don't want to go near snakes, check them out on the rattle cam. They'll be a safe distance from you, and you can watch them from the safety of your computer screen or on your phone. So let me stop blabbering. Let's get into it. Really excited with our guest today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Emily Taylor. Thank you, Emily, for coming onto the podcast today. I am very excited to talk to you because about 20 episodes deep, we've had a lot of mammal talk. I'm excited to talk about the scaly, the slithery, the snakes, and that is right up your alley. Am I right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The pinnacle of evolution, the snakes.
So let's talk about exactly how snakes are a part of your world, how you got into them, how they encompass your day-to-day life.
Sure, of course. I was not one of those kids who chased the scaly critters around. I was obsessed with soccer. And then about halfway through college, I quit the soccer team and developed another obsession, which was snakes. I was handed one by my college professor on a field trip, and that was that. And since then, I really have developed this appreciation and admiration for all the crazy things they're able to do with no arms or legs. Such amazing animals that they can get their food, right, by constriction or eating. They're just a big tube of muscles. They're able to survive with very little water, and the list goes on. And so I'm a professor of biology at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in California, and I do research with snakes. I also have a consulting company where I do things like moving rattlesnakes out of people's yards for free in parts of California. I train people on snake safety, how to handle and relocate snakes, all kinds of things in service of helping people coexist with snakes and learning about them. My favorite project is currently a live streaming camera that we have on rattlesnakes. We could talk more about that if you want. That allows us to watch rattlesnakes behaving naturally, which is so cool.
I would love to hear about that because I know a lot of people fall in 2 camps. Either you love snakes, you have appreciation for snakes, or you want to keep a safe distance from snakes. But I guess watching snakes through a webcam is probably the safest way to view snakes, especially rattlesnakes. So can you tell me a little bit about the project?
Absolutely. It's called Project Rattlecam. And we have, for the past 4 years, had a live streaming camera on a small snake gestation site for Western rattlesnakes in California. But then it really got crazy when last year we put a second camera on a prairie rattlesnake den and gestation site in Colorado. That's a mega den. It has like hundreds of snakes at it. And it's gone viral. It's gotten super popular. And it just has several amazing aspects to it. You're exactly right. First of all, we can watch snakes safely. Like, how many people actually can go out in the wild and find and go up to a rattlesnake den, or how many people would want to.
Exactly.
Very few, right? And for the people who do want to, sometimes it can be really hard to get to those things. Get those places are hard to reach. And so we are bringing that to people. They can sit in their living room, they can sit at night. And also it's 24 hours a day. Even if you can get out there, you're not going to sit there for 24 hours a day. I would love to, but you're not going to be able to do that. So we have this really high-end camera that has infrared at night, so you can see them at night when they're tucked away into a crevice. It has remote pan tilt zoom that we operate via our computers here. And it also has a highly moderated live chat so that we can talk to people, and people who are watching at home can like ask us to zoom in on that snake over there. It really feels like they're part of an action. So it's been really great. We highly recommend that people check it out. Next year, we're putting in a third camera on timber rattlesnakes in Pennsylvania.
Oh, that's exciting. What's the website?
Rattlecam.org.
Easy enough to remember. So is there a particular time of day that you would expect the snakes to be more active?
Yeah, it depends on the time of year. Right now, we're recording this in late May, and believe it or not, in Colorado, where we're at high elevation, it still gets really cold at night, down to freezing at night. So the snakes are mostly tucked away, but then they'll come out in the mornings and they'll be out most of the day. If it gets hot during the day, they kind of go under the shrubs, so it's a little harder to see them, but you can still see them. So generally tell people to check in like late morning and then check back a few times and see. A lot of people just kind of keep it on. They have a second monitor and they'll just keep it on the side while they're working so they can see out of the corner of their eye. Really cool, because you never know what you're going to see. On Saturday, we saw a magpie come and carry away a baby rattlesnake. Yeah, and we saw the other night, in the middle of the night, we saw a porcupine walk by. You just see kind of just crazy stuff all the time. But mostly you're just seeing piles of snakes and they're interacting. They have this secret language. They're like twitching at each other. They do these little head twitches. And so we can study that better because, you know, when you're there in person, sometimes the snakes aren't behaving naturally. They're looking at you and kind of like, I know you're there. But with this live cam, we can watch them, and we can watch them for the whole time. So we're actually studying that twitching behavior this year and trying to decode it and figure out what they're saying to each other.
Ooh, secret snake language.
I know, right? I mean, people have noticed this before, but really only snake enthusiasts who would go out and sit for hours and watch it. It hasn't really been documented in the literature. Sure, we know that male snakes will twitch their heads onto female snakes when they're courting them.
Oh yeah, we all know that.
Yeah, no, of course we all do. Yeah, it's just common knowledge. But what we see is different types of twitching, and these just little, you know, behaviors, and even the baby rattlesnakes do it to, you know, their aunties and the parents. It's really, really fascinating. That social behavior of rattlesnakes is just wild. We're just starting to learn about it. And I think that's a really great way to introduce people to snakes and say, look, they're not these, you know, vermin that you might think they are. They're not, you know, rearing up, trying to strike at people like you see them on TV. They're actually these calm, gentle animals with these complex social systems. The moms take care of the babies. They even babysit for one another. It's just so cool. Watch out, though, because people get addicted when they start watching this Project Rattlecam live stream.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm in that camp. I do not know a lot about like rattlesnake social structure. That's fascinating because usually you go out hiking, if you see a snake, you see a snake. You don't see like a group of snakes, but I'm not used to seeing these interactions in the den. What part of their life cycle, I guess, do they spend time in this den, and when do they go out on their own to kind of venture out into the parks or hiking trails that you usually run into a rattlesnake?
Yeah, such good questions. First of all, it depends on the species. Some species are far more solitary and some are far more social. It has a lot to do with, you know, where they live, the climate, and then things we can't really explain yet. We're trying to figure out. So for example, here in the coastal California where I live, and we have the western rattlesnake or the northern Pacific rattlesnake, same thing. Those snakes are typically going to be solitary, but we might see them gather together in the summer. Pregnant females might gather to give birth together. And then we might occasionally see them all in the same rock pile for the winter at like a hibernaculum, but in small numbers. They're usually going to be pretty solitary, though, unless it's a male trying to mate with a female. But if you go to someplace like Colorado, the prairie rattlesnakes there's so few areas where the temperature is right for them to get under the frost line in the winter that you have these massive hibernacula or megadens. And then they all kind of bask and hang out there, and then the males and non-pregnant females all leave, and they go for miles around, and they're down in the prairie, probably by themselves, foraging all summer. But the pregnant females stay behind, and they're all together, socializing. It's like a coffee clatch. They're like all morning long, like, what are you doing? You know, chit-chat. And so we see them all summer long, and then they give birth. We actually last year witnessed the first ever, to my knowledge, birth of a rattlesnake live on camera. So that was really cool to be able to see that. Female just lifts her tail and starts birth because they give live birth. I don't know if you know that. They don't lay eggs. And we got to see this happen while people were watching from around the planet. Amazing.
Yes, I'll throw out a fancy word for my listener: viviparous.
That's right.
They give live birth. So,
They sure
but
do.
that's not all snakes do that. So depending on the species, other snakes lay eggs. Some give
Yeah, I
live
would say
birth.
most snake species lay eggs, but several, I don't know the exact numbers, maybe 30 or 40% are viviparous, and it has evolved independently multiple times. So it's pretty common. If it's not the majority though.
I'm quite proud of myself, even though I don't work with reptiles. I work with mammals. I do remember some of those terminologies from back in my college days. So,
Well, you would find it fascinating though as a mammal biologist because as most people know, mammals have a placenta. At least most of them have a fully developed placenta, like we do. And that placental structure has actually evolved in many reptiles via convergent evolution. It has some similarities and it has some differences. So, for example, in a rattlesnake, they're not really providing nutrients to the developing babies over through the placenta and the umbilical cord. I mean, they are giving them minerals and water, but they're not giving them, caloric nutrients. Instead, at the time of ovulation, they have a big yolky egg, just like an egg-laying reptile would, but they don't lay the egg and they don't put shell on it. They just kind of keep it inside their bodies, and they will suck the yolk up via their umbilical cord and grow and grow and grow. Meanwhile, getting hormones, water, minerals, and stuff from the mother. So when they're born, they have a little umbilical cord that breaks off, and they have little belly buttons. It's really adorable.
little snake belly buttons. That does sound adorable.
I know.
Are there any parental instincts, or once the babies are born, are they kind of on their own? And what do you call a baby snake? Is there a particular name?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. Some people get really upset about this, and some people get really happy about this. But my research mentor as an undergraduate, Dr. Harry Green, coined the term pups for rattlesnakes, and it has really caught on. So rattlesnake babies are called pups, just like shark babies are called pups, and of course many mammal babies are. But you can also just call them babies or neonates.
I like pups. I'm using
yeah,
that.
Yeah, I like pups too. I mean, I'm all for it. Why should sharks and mammals have get to use that term and not us? So yeah, rattlesnake pups are born, and in particular, rattlesnake mothers do exhibit quote parental care end quote, and it's like maternal attendance. So they'll stay with the babies. They sometimes will protect them if there's like a predator that arrives. They'll be protective. They'll be a little bit more defensively aggressive, so to speak, than they might have been otherwise. And then they also might be providing more cryptic types of care, like the fact that they all kind of snuggle together. That might help the babies in thermoregulating. It might help them in reducing their water loss to the environment. All kinds of things that could be going on.
I do want to kind of emphasize, maybe you can expand on this for anyone that's listening who might have like a subtle fear of snakes, which is kind of understandable. But, you said they're defensive, but for the most part, snakes want to avoid danger and trouble and they don't want to, harm people. The best method is just kind of give them their space and stay away from them. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. With the exception of the very occasional huge reticulated python, for example, in Indonesia, that might be big enough to eat a person, no snake is going to be truly aggressive. Because the word aggression really implies going after somebody, right? Instead,
Right.
rattlesnakes and every other snake basically are defensive. They're terrified of people. They can't eat us. If they see a person, they're only going to bite to defend themselves. Everything that people fear about rattlesnakes very much is predicated based on what we see on TV. TV, YouTube, they will show these riled up rattlesnakes that are rattling, maybe striking to defend themselves. Those are terrified snakes. A child at an outreach event once said, which I love this, they looked at the snake and rattling, and they said, that snake is it's not being terrifying. The rattling is the way the snake is screaming. I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, right? And it's true. It's not like I'll get you, I'll bite you. It's more of a like, please leave me alone. I'm so scared. And if people just really, it's pretty easy to be safe around rattlesnakes. Just keep your distance and don't mess with rattlesnakes. Watch them from 10 feet away, admire them from a distance. And then, of course, be really careful if you're walking through tall grass or working in areas where there's snakes. Don't put your hands and feet where you can't see them. If you do those two things, no one's going to get bit by a rattlesnake. They're going to go their separate ways and everyone's going to be happy.
Yeah, also they're great rodent control. I don't know about, anyone listening, but I'd rather have a snake in my backyard than a bunch of rats.
Yeah, they really are. I mean, the collective impact of rattlesnakes on rodent control, I mean, it can't even really be measured. And that's because there's so many rattlesnakes eating so many rodents. And of course, it's not just the fact that rodents will, if left unchecked, their populations would increase and they would eat our crops, eat all of our native plants, just eat all of the plants in our yard, all that. But also rodents carry diseases, things like hantavirus, Lyme disease, is actually transferred via ticks, but it's carried in these reservoirs that are called rodents. Other things too, plague is carried by California ground squirrels here, which have a really tight relationship with rattlesnakes. So they control these rodent-borne diseases. And there's just so much more. Rattlesnakes help to disperse seeds. So if you have a little kangaroo rat that has a cheek pouch full of seeds, if that kangaroo rat swallows the seeds, its gut will digest those seeds, right? That's what mammals' guts do. But if a rattlesnake eats it, essentially the rattlesnake's gut will rescue those seeds because as a carnivore, it cannot digest the plant material. What does the rattlesnake do? It crawls away somewhere, eventually poops those seeds out in a pile of fertilizer and allows those seeds to be dispersed and will germinate now away from the parent plant. And then, of course, there's so much more. Rattlesnake venom is an inspiration for many drugs that are saving people's lives to the point now where in the United States, we actually have more people's lives being saved by rattlesnake venom than being taken by bites. It's super rare for anyone to die from a rattlesnake bite in the U.S.
That they're our friends. That's great.
They really are. They really are our friends, and I hope people will look at them in a different way.
Yeah, it's the circle of life. It makes perfect sense with the seed dispersal, but I never thought about it that way before.
I love that story. And I love that you said that, Mike, because it's a true biologist to say that. Most people in the public are like, oh yeah, they help us with controlling rodent diseases, or, oh my gosh, they help, the drug helped treat my uncle who had a stent put in his heart. The drug helped him live. But you're like, oh, seed dispersal, that's cool. Like, yes, I agree with you. That's super neat, isn't it?
We speak the language.
That's
so
right.
You got into snakes in college, which seems pretty late in life. I know most of my reptile nerd friends, they've been doing it since, getting into reptiles and snakes and lizards since they were childhood.
Totally. Yeah, it was late, but I'll say, of course, it's never too late, right? The snake bug can bite you, so to speak, at any age. But yeah, it wasn't until I was 20 years old. And I'm just an obsessive person. So I think at that point, my obsession swapped from soccer, which I was kind of done with, over to snakes. So whatever it is that's the apple of my eye is going to get a lot of attention.
So what inspired the rattle cam?
The rattle cam was inspired by two things. First of all, my colleague Scott Boback, who is a professor at Dickinson College in Pennsylvania and a good friend to go back many, many decades. Oh my God. Decades, that's true. He had put just some time-lapse cameras on a rattlesnake den and gestation site. And at this prairie rattlesnake site, it's not the same site we have the current live cam at, but it was another site. And we just saw these numbers and how amazing it was. And when he was doing that, and I was starting to do some field work with him, I was also a big fan of a live cam on a peregrine falcon nest at UC Berkeley. It's called the Cal Falcon Cam. And UC Berkeley is my alma mater. So I was watching these peregrine falcon parents come and feed their babies every day. And it was just so cool. And I thought, wait a minute, we need to have this for rattlesnakes. Why should the birds have all the fun of having people watch them provision their babies? Like, we need to have this on a place where rattlesnakes all stay put. And since we had the place, we had the technology, we've actually made it happen. It's like a dream come true. It's the best thing I've ever done. I'm so excited by it. I'm proud of it and just gratified by it. But of course, I can't get anything done now because all I do is sit and stare at rattlesnakes on the screen all day long.
Well, that's the first place I'm going. As soon as this interview is done, I'm going to check out Rattlecam. I want to see some snakes and I want to see what they're doing right now at 7:50 p.m. on the West Coast.
Yeah, and if you go tonight, it'll either be them zoomed in on them. They pack into this crevice that the viewers call the clown car because so many of them will pack into it. So they're either going to be all packed in there, or later at night we will pull the camera back out and just kind of have it show the whole scene so that we can see if any like bears or wolves or bobcats or porcupines or something walks by, that certainly then during the day we'll zoom back in on those snakes and just, you'll see. It's amazing.
Now, are these animals just walking by, or they show interest in the den? Do they have, I mean, we talked about the magpie. Obviously, I guess that's a predator, but who are the predators to these snakes?
Yeah, great question. Lots of predators. And we were really shocked last year that we only saw one magpie take a baby rattlesnake last year. And then so far one this year. We thought there was going to be so much more because our other cameras on different prairie rattlesnake dens have shown, red-tailed hawks eating them as well. Badgers just get in there and just eat them and don't seem to mind anything. And then there's definitely other predators too, like foxes and bobcats. We haven't seen them eating rattlesnakes on our cameras, but we know that those are major predators too. But we haven't seen much. And we think that there's so many snakes concentrated in one area that the predators are really cautious and reluctant to come down there because they might get bitten. And of course, magpies and other birds of prey are not resistant to rattlesnake venom. They would get bit. If they got bitten, they would die.
Okay, but they take the risks. How do they avoid not getting bit? Do they just have to work fast?
Well, I know. I mean, it's a great question, right? And it is a risk, first of all. But all I can answer is that we seem to have kind of figured out how they do that based on watching this camera. So it's just one of many ways which we're learning by watching this camera. In both cases where we saw the magpies take the baby rattlesnakes, they grabbed them by the head. So they had them by the head in their beak, meaning the rattlesnake couldn't bite them. And so they'll take them away. And I bet they just take those big magpie beaks and kind of spear, not shoo, so to speak, but kind of bang, 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 bang down and crush the skull. And then they can just rip away at the body all they want. That is not a pleasant picture I've painted, but you know what? It's like you said, it's the circle of life. And if something's going to eat a rattlesnake, that's actually kind of cool.
Like we've talked about it before on other episodes, but nature's not always pretty.
No. And I mean, people say, oh my gosh, are you so upset that something ate the rattlesnake? I said, no, I think that if something can dive bomb into a den of dozens of rattlesnakes hanging around and take one away, that's a pretty awesome animal. My students would say that's a metal bird. That bird is metal. It's amazing. It can do it. I love it.
Now, being a snake fanatic, I guess, is that the right word to
Sure.
use? When you're talking to someone or hearing someone talk about snakes is not so knowledgeable, when they call a snake poisonous, how fast are you to correct them?
I'm not fast to correct them because I don't really care about that distinction.
Oh, okay.
I think that if I'm in like my herpetology class, I will explain the difference to the students because they are there to learn about the scientific aspects of it. And there is a difference between poisonous and venomous. And so you're referring to the fact that, poison is typically ingested and venom is typically injected. So most snakes that are toxic are going to be venomous snakes. They inject their venom via fangs. There are some poisonous snakes. They're very, very rare though. And those actually happen to be venomous too. So there's some snakes in the genus Rhabdophis over in parts of Asia that produce this poison that comes out of these glands in their neck. So they would potentially poison a predator. They're also venomous. So anyway, that's pretty cool. So I'll tell people that in my class. But if it's just a person whose yard I went to help them with a rattlesnake and remove it and they call it poisonous, I don't care. I mean, I think that sometimes that can alienate people who are just trying to get the point across. And we don't want to alienate people. I want to be able to talk to people on the level that they're coming at it. And to them, poison versus venom does not matter. There's a rattlesnake in their yard. That's what matters.
Yeah, I love those like cartoons, little jokes you see of people like reaching for the snakes and, someone goes, no, don't. They're poisonous. Like, no, they're not. They're venomous. And they go forward anyway. Anyway, that was dumb.
Yes.
That's great. So with your interaction with snakes and snake removal, have you had any like interesting interactions or scary encounters or close calls?
I mean, there's been so much adventure. Like we do about 100 snakes a year in terms of 100 rattlesnakes a year of going and catching those and relocating them out of people's yards in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties in California. Lots of other people doing it around the country. And just as a side note, there's a website called freesnakerelocation.com if your viewers want to look at that and find people in their area to relocate snakes. But yeah, I've had some interesting encounters. Some of them have been interesting because of the snakes and some because of the people. So, for example, I will do something that most people will not do, which is I will go down under a crawl space to get snakes out from under a home. So you can picture going down there and you're belly crawling down in a dark area that, and there's a rattlesnake down there because someone saw a rattlesnake go under that. That's why they called. And so you kind of have to pull yourself forward, and then with your headlamp, you're looking left and right and down because you don't want to, crawl onto it. And then finally, you'll see it over in the corner, and you have to grab it with your tongs and then back out while keeping the snake away from you. And sometimes the snakes are very upset to be taken out of their nice, snug little corners. So that's always fun, but I feel like I just know how rattlesnakes move so well that I'm able to do it. And it's a huge relief to people. There's something about having a rattlesnake under your home that really gets to people. It feels like it's in the home. Like even if the snake can't get inside their living room, they're just like, there's a snake underneath me, and they freak out. So I'm really glad that I'm able to do that. So I've been doing things like that. I will say that there's been some interesting people too. So, you get called out to people's homes, and usually there's a rattlesnake coiled up in their yard, but occasionally there'll be junk piles all around their house. It's like a herper's paradise. That's what people who love snakes like to go to junk piles, because that's where the snakes hang out. And so they'll say, "Oh, I saw this snake and it got away." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm going to be like a year here looking for this snake." And then very occasionally it will be inside their home. Like, unfortunately, be someone who's a hoarder and there's a snake that's gotten into their home. It's impossible to find that snake. It's really difficult. So you really kind of do see it all. I really like the way that I get to interact with people and see what people's homes are like mostly on the outside, and what their yards are like and what the snakes are doing, and be able to help them figure out why the snake was in their yard and what to do about it. It's a really cool experience to interact with people that way and help them with snakes.
Yeah. Another situation that I hear often when it comes to rattlesnakes, and my wife happens to be a veterinary technician, and she's had a dog in yesterday that got a snake bite, and people are always concerned about their dogs or pets around snakes. So do you have any tips for people to keep their pets safe around snakes, and also keep the snakes safe that may be in the environment?
Yeah, I have very strong opinions about that, and my opinions are all based in scientific research, which I think is really important, that people listen to snake experts that pay attention to research and not just their opinion based on confirmation bias or that type of thing, which you'll get from a lot of people who want to make their opinions known. It's controversial. There's some controversial issues with the rattlesnake and like dog safety. So first of all, there's a vaccine that some people can get at their veterinarians, which doesn't have any support really that it does help. Some veterinarians will swear by it and say that they seem to help their dogs buy more time before they get the antivenom. So you still have to get the antivenom.
Yeah.
My understanding though is that vaccine recently, like the license or whatever it is that gets associated with it, I'm not a veterinarian, so I don't know what it's called, has expired. So it may not actually be available anymore. But at any rate, I'm not worrying about it because I don't get it for my dog. I would never do that. Instead, what I do for my dog is rattlesnake aversion training. Strongly recommend. You can do it out east with copperheads and cottonmouths too. You have to find a good trainer, a trainer that knows dogs and snakes. What they'll do is they'll use an e-collar, which is the collar that gives a little buzz to the dog's neck. It's a negative reinforcement paired with a snake. So they'll maybe have a live snake that's muzzled. They'll have the sight, smell, and sound of a rattlesnake. And that teaches your dog to stay away, to back away when they encounter a snake. And it works really, really well. So I'm a huge advocate for that, because that costs anywhere between $80 and $250 to do that. Whereas if your dog gets bit by a snake, first of all, it could die. It really could, which would be terrible. But also it's extremely painful for the dog, and the medical treatment can cost thousands of dollars sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah. So it really is good. And then I guess my last thing I would say is keep your dog on a leash. I understand that's not possible sometimes for hunting dogs or for, people who live in places where there might be rattlesnakes getting into the yards that the dogs hang out. But when you take your dog out into a public trail, keep your dog on a leash. That's going to be good for the dog and for snakes. And also, like where I live, there's so many ticks and poison oak and other things like that. I just would rather have my dog on a leash any day.
Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping you to say, because I'm totally in favor of the aversion training. Keep your dog safe. Just train them to stay away from the nope ropes. Don't go near the snakes.
Oh,
And
totally. I mean, it's not
yes,
foolproof because, if they're running through grass and they step on a
right.
rattlesnake, they could get bit. But the majority of dog bites are when they stick their faces down and sniff at a rattlesnake and they get bit in the face.
Yeah, that's funny. Because well, that's not funny, but the snake bite that was at my wife's work was right on the nose, and that's typically what it is. Just
It really is typically there, and the aversion training will
yeah,
reduce the risk of that quite a bit. I mean, and again, listeners who want to learn more about this, highly recommend joining a Facebook group called National Snakebite Support. It might be weird that I'm saying a Facebook group, but the only reason it's a Facebook group is because this is a nonprofit who uses Facebook to connect with people. So what you can do is you can join it and swear that you will not comment, because if you comment, you'll get kicked out. But people post their cases there and are allowed to connect with medical toxicologists and veterinary toxicologists to get proper snakebite care for people and pets. It's really great to learn that way.
interesting. Yeah, check that out. Also, you're an author of several snake-related books. Do you have any recent ones you like to promote?
Of course.
But what books do you have, and where can people find them?
Yeah, thanks. I have two books that I'm an author of, and they're both pretty recent. The snake book came out about a year ago. It's called California Snakes and How to Find Them. It's the title is, of course, an ode to Fantastic Beasts and where to find them. The Harry Potter fame.
Yes,
So snakes are kind of the most fantastic beasts of all. So I wrote the book, which is, I don't know, kind of like a field guide, but a non-technical field guide. Instead of scale counts and range maps, it has stories and basic information on those animals and beautiful photographs. So it's a way for people to learn how to actually become a herper, how to go out and find these animals in the wild. And then very recently, my second book came out, which is California Lizards and How to Find Them. Both of these are published by Heyday Books, so they're available anywhere online. And then my third book comes out in February of 2026, and it's California Amphibians and How to Find Them. So it will be a trilogy of all of the reptiles and amphibians in California. It's leaving out turtles, so I may do a fourth mini book on turtles because there's not very many of those in California, but they need to have their own book. I mean, we can't leave those out, right?
absolutely not. Don't neglect the turtles and tortoises.
No, we can't neglect those. So I'm sure it'll eventually be a 3.5 book series, but they're really fun. They're just beautiful little books. I'm excited about the way they turned out. I've been kind of doing a little book tour for the lizard book recently, and people love them because it's very accessible to people who are not professional herpetologists. So I recently went to a California Native Plant Society wildflower show, and the people there were super thrilled to get the book because they are interested in the lizards that are in their yards, because they all have native gardens, which attracts bugs, which attracts reptiles. And they wanted to learn about the lizards in their yard. And this book is very, very accessible to them. It's also good for kids who are getting into snakes and lizards because it has non-technical language. They've been so fun to write.
That's great. That's exciting. So yeah, check out Emily Taylor's books. You can get information on your website. I have it up here is emilytaylorscience.com. All the information on your books, your rattle camp, your teachings at Cal Poly, all things snakes. You're in it. I love it.
There. Everything's there.
Everything's there. Thank you so much. These have been some great stories. Thanks for coming on Wild Tales. Do you have anything you'd like to add before we go?
Well, just one more thing is that
Definitely.
People should go to snakeweek.org because we are doing the first ever Snake Week this year. Yeah.
Oh, wow. My dog's so excited.
Your dog loves the Snake Week. That timing was impeccable. Yeah, we are. There's, World Snake Day is every year is in the middle of July, and we are. Me and some other organizers are doing a full week to celebrate the year of the snake. So it's the first year of Snake Week, and if people go to snakeweek.org, or follow us on social media, find it's the handle is different on all the different social medias, but you can find us. You can find it through my website too. Then they can follow. There's events being held around the world, in person and online. All of those are going to be celebrating snakes. So follow us and check back often. And then hopefully I'll see some people online at some of the online presentations.
I did not know that. I'm so excited about Snake Week now. I'm following it.
It's going to be so cool. It's going to be really excited. And the word's just starting to get out, and we're thrilled. We already have almost 60 partner organizations around the world who are going to be holding events. And I think it will grow pretty soon from here too.
Great. Super exciting. Well, thank you so much, Emily.
Yep, you bet. Thank you for having me, Mike.
All right. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming by, and take care.
Thank you.
I want to give a huge thanks to Emily Taylor. That was such a fun discussion. I am so excited about Snake Week. Come on, if you're a fan of Shark Week, you're going to love Snake Week. Check out the Rattle Cam on YouTube. You can get links on her website, emilytaylorscience.com. Check out her books and everything she's up to. Let's learn to love and appreciate all wildlife around us, even snakes. If you're not a fan, just keep your distance. Trust me. Snakes want to keep their distance from you. They are generally not aggressive. If you give them the space they desire, they will give you the space you desire. So keeping that in mind, are you a fan of snakes? Let me know. Shoot me a message, write a comment on my Instagram at wildtalespod, or send me an email at wildtalespod@gmail.com. That's tails spelled Tails. I look forward to hearing from you. Please, if you're enjoying the podcast, tell your friends, tell your families, write a review, give me a 5-star rating. If I like your review, maybe I'll read it on the podcast. You can be famous for a week or 2 weeks, because that's every time I release the episodes. I'm blabbering. I think we should wrap this up. So, thank you for listening. Until next time, stay wild, my friends.